Sure. Well, thanks, Leslie. Yeah, I'm sorry I joined a little late, but I'm glad I'm here. Thanks for having me. Um, and I'm really thrilled to be here right now. First, I'm Josh. I'm an alcoholic, um, and I see we have a lot of people on, and I guess all the folks at Pavillon are here now. So I'm really grateful to talk to you and kind of share, I guess, a little bit about what I went through and how I got to Pavillon, and then what happened after I left Pavillon. And I'll tell you that I got to Pavillon in, I guess, the summer of 2017, and I left. So I did 6 weeks in primary and then 6 weeks in the young men's extended care. And I think it's a little bit different now, but I was there for 12 weeks. And then I went to a sober living house in Asheville, and I stayed there for a couple months. And then I moved to their, I guess you'd call it transitional living, where I was pretty much on my own, but they were there. They did drug and alcohol testing, and there were the other guys in the house. They were sober as well, and I think that was really good for me to kind of really step down kind of gradually, and then I moved out into a house, my own house with another buddy of mine who was sober. Yeah, and then today I still live in Asheville, and I live in my own place, and I live with my girlfriend now. So it's been a really nice progression. Um, so okay, I'll back up a little bit. I never really drank too much in high school. I did, a couple times, but it was never really my thing. And then after I graduated high school, I went down to New Orleans for college, and I was 18 years old. Looking back, I was very immature emotionally, and you take a kid, I was away from home, away from my parents' house in New Orleans. I had, my parents would put some money in my bank account, and I was on my own, and it was kind of a disaster. I just wasn't ready for it. But it's interesting. My freshman year of college, I didn't really do much drinking. I just didn't. But then, and I guess the reason why is I never really cared for it. But I was definitely, I was always very uncomfortable. I was, I was, I felt like I couldn't relate to other people my own age. I couldn't, I couldn't go out and party. I was never relaxed. I was never at ease. And then one day towards the end of the year, someone said to me, "Hey, where I got these pot brownies," and I don't think I ever smoked a cigarette, back then, or anything. And they said, you don't have to smoke a joint or anything, you just have to eat the brownie. And I said, wow, okay, I want to try it. And I think I was told, maybe to eat half of one. And so I thought, okay, that makes sense. So I'm going to have two of them, and I'm sure we can, probably everybody here can relate to that. So I did that. And I remember I was in a dorm room, and there were some guys and girls there, and the stuff started to take effect. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, I found it. I found the answer because I felt relaxed and I felt calm. I felt I could be funny. And looking back on it, I don't think I was being very funny. I probably was, I don't know, probably just sitting there almost catatonic, but I thought, wow, this is how I want to feel all the time. And that's what I did. I started to, eventually I started to smoke pot more. I found out about that, and I got more comfortable with that. And I was smoking pot every day, all day. And then I went back to New Orleans for my sophomore year, and I found some harder stuff, and but I kept smoking pot all the time, and you know, I'll share this story. So I was a pretty angry kid. I'm not entirely sure about what, but I wasn't happy, and doing drugs made it okay for a little bit, but it doesn't fix it. You're not doing anything to deal with the problem. And I remember one day I was very upset. I was angry. I was pissed off, about probably my grades. I didn't have any friends. Uh, and I hadn't smoked pot that day. And I remember I got back to my dorm room, and I sat down, and I smoked a little pot, and it, like, the anger went away. I mean, it totally, I felt fine. I felt happy. I was good to go. And, I share that because, I mean, that's what I was doing the drugs for. I didn't want to be angry. I wanted to feel okay, uh, even for a little while. And, it kind of just continued like that. And life started to get, a little worse. And then eventually I found, I kept going into the harder stuff, and eventually I found painkillers, and that moved into heroin. So that, I went all the way. And as the pod and some of the other drugs that kind of stopped working, I kept moving up the scale. And it was a really sad day, or it's a sad time, when even doing a drug as strong as heroin, it didn't work. I mean, that's terrible, because I was hooked on it, and it wasn't doing it for me. I was still miserable all the time. And so I spoke with my family, and we kind of said, look, that this isn't working. Something needs to change here, and I need some help. And so I went to an inpatient treatment center in California, and I didn't stay sober. And I knew the drugs weren't working, but because my life was, I didn't really have a life, but I wasn't ready to get sober yet. And I looking back, the reason why I believe I wasn't ready to get sober is because it hadn't gotten bad enough for me. And I hadn't found my bottom. It hadn't gotten yet to a point where the benefits of getting high did not yet, or they still outweighed the consequences. And I think that's a point that everybody has to reach, where you say to yourself, look, this isn't working, and I don't, it's not worth it to keep getting high or getting drunk. And so, and until I reached that point, I was just going to keep extending the misery. And so I went to that treatment center. and I was actually asked to leave that place. And then my family sent me to a place in Kentucky. And this was a place, the treatment center in California was similar to Pavillon. That, I mean, it was pretty damn nice. They feed you, and you have so many people working there and trying to help you, and it was very nice. My parents sent me to a place that was pretty much the opposite of that. It was there were chores, and nobody cooked for you, and it was hard. It was a young men's program, and it was pretty intense. They had a punishment system where you got strikes, and the strikes were things like if you left a light on, or you didn't close the door to a room, or you didn't replace the trash bag, you'd get a strike, and you would write essays. And the simpler strikes were 300 or 500 word essays. And then as the behavioral infractions got greater, lying, or not being a good house member, the essays would get upwards of 10 or 20 or even 50,000 words. And the way that it worked is, if you had an essay over 1,000 words, you weren't allowed to talk until you finished writing. And if you did talk, they would tack on another 1,000 words. And so I think the biggest essay I got was probably close to 100,000. And so I didn't talk for like maybe 3 or 4 weeks. And I see Leslie, I'm looking at your screen right now. I see you're kind of like in shock, and it was like, talking about it now, it's insane. It was a crazy place, but it really drove home to me that wow, like this, I don't like this. This is not where I want to be. And so I was there for like 10 or 11 months, and I had almost graduated the program. It was a year-long program. So I would always chuckle when people would complain, like, oh, I don't want to have to go to extended care for an extra 6 weeks. And be like, come on now, it's not that bad. Yeah. And the place, it helped me. I learned, a little bit more discipline, but it ultimately didn't work. And they broke you down. That was their method. They would really try to break you. And then I guess try to build you back up, but it didn't work for me. So I relapsed again. And this was, I busted out of there because I was getting high there, and I think they wanted to drug test me, and I knew I was going to fail, and I said, no, I'm out of here. And so I got out of there, and I had a job at that point. I was working in a warehouse, a police supply warehouse in Lexington, Kentucky. And so I left there, and that was in maybe May of 2017. And the time, May 2017 till about July, I think I got to Pavillon July 20th. Those couple months, that was when it really got bad for me. Not that it wasn't bad before, but that, I was alone, and I was doing heroin again, and I had started to use a needle, and so it went worse and worse. It got worse than it ever had been, and I ran out of money, and so it was just this constant cycle of I get a little money, I do the drugs, and then I get sick. I just live like that. And then eventually, I forget exactly what happened, but my family asked me to take a drug test. I said, okay. And so the drug test came back positive. And my dad called me. He said, hey, the drug test came back positive. And at that point, I was so exhausted. I didn't even bother denying it. I didn't come up with a story. I just said, yeah, it did. And my dad said to me, okay, what do you want to do? And in that moment, I knew that I had two options. I could say, well, can I try this again? Can I get some help? Or I could have said, you know what, screw you. I'm going to keep going and doing what I'm doing, do what I'm doing. And I think because it was bad enough, and because I had been allowed to get as miserable as I had been, I said to him, you know what, can I try to, go back to treatment? And he said, yes. And my parents found Pavillon. I'm 30 right now. I was 26. It was a while ago. I'm gonna have 5 years in July. So I just celebrated 4 years a couple months ago. Yeah. Yeah. And so I went to Pavillon, and I remember I got to the detox unit at Pavillon, and I was sitting there and I was laughing. And I was laughing because I was so happy that it was over. I didn't have to go through the trying to get money and being sick all the time and being alone. I was thrilled. I was absolutely thrilled. Yeah, and so that was July of 2017. And I when I was at Pavillon, so that feeling of, oh, it's over, thank goodness, it stayed with me. But as I was at Pavillon, I stayed there, I went to EC. I asked myself, or I would still think about doing drugs. And I don't think I'm terribly unique in that. I'm a couple weeks or a couple months sober. I mean, it was still in my mind. And I kept going with it. I was in treatment. I was doing what they told me to do, but it was still in the back of my mind. And then when I went to Asheville, and I'll say it, I had a reservation, and I knew that one day I would be in a position where I had some money, I had some freedom, and I would be able to get high again if I so chose. And some time went by, and I graduated from Pavillon, and I felt good. But it was still in the back of my mind, and I don't even know if I was conscious of that. But I mean, it's been 4 years. I've had a lot of time to reflect on it. Good, I still have some time. Okay. And so I remember I was at the sober living in Asheville, and I went to a meeting on Haywood Road in West Asheville. And that day, I had gotten some bad news. What I did as a career, if you can believe it, I was a pilot. I taught people how to fly, and I had lost my medical certificate. As one might expect. And so I was trying to get it back. And I had gone to the aviation medical examiner, and he said to me, well, I can't give you your medical. I have to defer it to the Federal Aviation Administration. And he had told me that day. And I was really hoping that he was going to give it to me that day and there wouldn't be any more administrative issues, but that wasn't the case. And I knew, when he said, oh, I have to defer it to the federal agency, I knew it would be months, and more letters and more medical tests and, lawyers. And I was really upset. And I was in this meeting on Haywood Road, and I was pissed off. And I said, I'm getting out of here. And so, there wasn't anybody, there wasn't anybody watching me. So I walked out of the meeting and I started walking up and down the road. And the thought crossed my mind, maybe I should see if I can find something. And I was walking, up and down, and I found a guy, walking on the side, and I saw this guy with a bow and arrow. He was walking around with a bow and arrow. And I don't know why. I guess it's what he wanted to be doing. And I started talking to him. And I said to him, I said, do you know where anything is at? And he said, yeah, let me, I can go get some now. And I mean, that's how close I was. That's how close. I mean, but I was aware. I had enough sanity. I had enough recovery at that moment. And because things had been getting better, right? I had been sober for, 3 or 4 months. I was getting some trust back. I didn't feel like an asshole all the time. And I walked away from it. I don't know. I said, let me think about it. And I walked back into the meeting. And that was as close as I got to a relapse. And I realized, even, that was, it hasn't been, I guess, the worst, may that be the worst thing that ever happens to me. I have to, I don't get good news from a doctor about some form. But I didn't get high. I didn't get high. I didn't relapse. And so even in one of my lowest moments, it still did not make sense to me to get high, right? I wanted a solution. I felt bad. I felt shitty. But I thought to myself, even as bad as I feel right now, getting high will not solve the situation. Yeah. And I reflecting back on that moment, I peered over the edge, and I hope nobody has to get there, but I did, and I didn't go over. I stayed on. And I don't know, I guess ever since then, I've had plenty of bad days, that's going to happen. I've gotten plenty of bad news, or things didn't go my way. That's what it was, right? Things didn't go my way that day. And I was pissed off, and, that's all it was. But ever since then, when things don't go wrong, they don't go the way that I want them to go, my first thought is no longer, well, maybe I should get high. That mindset, or that thought process, I don't think that way anymore. And I would say, that happened, I don't know, maybe 8 months to a year in. I remember I was going, maybe it was to meet my girlfriend's family for the first time, and I was nervous, and I wanted to impress them. And I was driving over there, and I had this anxiety and this pit in my stomach. Um, and I realized to myself, holy moly, I feel uncomfortable right now, but I have not thought, oh, maybe if I got high, I'd be able to deal with this better. And I was really proud of that moment. Um, and that I was aware of it. And that was probably about a year in. And so, today, um, it's crazy to think I've, getting on 5 years. But today I have plenty of problems, right? Life goes on, life happens. But the thought process now is, when things don't go my way, I don't have to fight or be constantly aware of the thought of, oh, I want to go get high. I'll think about drugs every now and again, but it's not a constant thing. But bad things happen, or things that I don't like happen, and I have an opportunity every time something like that occurs where I get to decide how I'm going to react to it. And sometimes I react better than others. Sometimes, I can be calm, and I can take a deep breath and take a step back and not react right away with anger or impulsivity. And then sometimes I do. And that's kind of what I work on today. And I think that's going to be like a long-term thing. Nobody can be perfect. But it just, stuff comes up every day. Recently, I was talking to someone, and they were a little rude to me, or I didn't like that they didn't. Yeah, I thought they should have been nicer to me, and it bothered me, and it upset me, and it pissed me off, and I let it get to me. And that wasn't a few days ago. That was earlier this afternoon, and I was annoyed, or I even say I was angry about it. And so, a couple hours went by, and I took a deep breath, and I kind of laughed. I laughed at myself, and I said, wow, this little insignificant, little person, they got to me. And I don't think there's any, I don't have any shame in admitting that, but I asked myself, okay, how could I have handled the situation better? And I think for me, the way to think about that is, well, okay, why is this person being rude? Why are they being condescending? Maybe they have something going on in their life, or, maybe they don't feel too hot about themselves, and they're just kind of taking that out on someone else. And sometimes I can see that in the moment, and then other times it takes me a little bit longer. But in the past, I would be real pissed off, and I'd probably go get high to deal with it. And now, I was upset for a couple hours, but then I was able to get some better perspective on the situation. So I think that's pretty good. And maybe in another 5 or 10 years, I'll be able to, maybe get upset for a minute, and then get a little bit better, and then, regain my serenity. 7:10. Okay, good. So I'll tell you, when I left Pavillon, I went to a lot of meetings, but I wasn't in love with it. I didn't love going to AA meetings, but I went because I was told to go. I said, okay. But then, maybe like 2 years in, I really backed off. I backed away from the program. And I I wasn't going to a lot of meetings. And, life went on. I didn't drink, I didn't get high. But I started to get irritable, more irritable. And I was irritable often. I started to get angry again. And I see a therapist twice a month. I used to see her once a week, but after maybe 2 or 3 years, we dialed it back to twice a month. And I was talking to her, and I told her how I was feeling. And she said to me, Josh, it seems like you have one foot in a relapse. And that blew me away. Because I wasn't thinking about getting high. And I said, holy moly, I have one foot in a relapse. I have 3 years sober or something. And she said, yeah, I think you should get to a meeting. And I said, well, okay. And I think one thing I've gotten better at is taking direction from other people. And I said, okay, so I'll go to a meeting. And I called up a buddy of mine, and I said, hey, this was during COVID. So I said to him, hey, do you know any good meetings I can go to? And he said, yeah, we have a Zoom meeting that we go to. It's at 6:00 tonight. I said, okay, I'll be there. And I went, and it was really nice. It was really nice to be in the presence of people who were trying to do what I was doing, which was to stay sober. And eventually, me and maybe 4 or 5 other people, we started our own Zoom meeting. And I'm the treasurer now. And so I'm in the, one of the founding members of the group. And I never thought that would be me. But I'm really proud of it. And it's nice to be there, and to see all different kinds of people coming in. And I can't believe that, because I would kind of laugh at, and like people would say, oh, I'm the treasurer, I'm the president. I kind of like, yeah, okay. But I don't know. I really like it. It feels good to be a part of something like that. And I also think it's kind of funny that they trust me with the money. That's wild. Are you kidding me? But I'm actually, this is, I'll wrap it up here in a second, but, so now 4 or 5 years in, I'm in school. I'm studying to be an accountant, at UNCA, and I'm going to try to go to Wake Forest to get a master's degree. And I do accounting right now. I do accounting and bookkeeping, and I really, every so often I'll kind of reflect on it. I'll say, wow, like these people, they trust me with their money. Like, are you kidding me? And they ask me questions, and they trust me. And it's wonderful. But I kind of think, I'm like, wow, it makes sense that they're doing that. I'm so much more responsible and dependable, today than I was, when I was getting high. Yeah. So I think that's all I got. I think I've given you an idea about kind of what I've been through, and I'd love to hear from you. Not that I'm really an authority, but if you have any questions, specific questions, I'd really love to hear from you guys. So thank you.